Hey everyone, I'm Kevin with Victory 4x4. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the installation of our Tundra Dash Accessory Mount. So in order to access everything we need to, such as the bottom of the dash here to get your dash mount in and the hardware installed, you're going to have to do some disassembly here in the center console. To start, we'll be removing this shift knob, followed by some of the lower trim panels here, and working our way up this center stack to get the radio removed. So like I just mentioned, we're going to start here with the factory shift knob. You should be able to pretty easily grab a hold of that and start threading it off. Once you have the shifter out of the way, you're going to want some sort of plastic pry tool. You're going to need to get underneath what in this truck is the brown leather shifter trim panel right here, starting on the driver's side, and just kind of start prying that up to get it removed. You can come around to the front here, and then once you can get your hand under there, you should be able to pretty easily lift that off. Once you have that out of the way, you'll want to open up the center console lid, and you're going to be removing this center cup holder section, which is also attached to this entire center trim section. For this, you should be able to get underneath one edge and start pulling it up, as it is just held in place at this point with plastic clips. Go ahead and use your pry tool around the sides as well if need be. Next, you'll be removing this lower panel from the center stack that's housing the 12-volt outlets and the USB plug. For this, get yourself something thin. I'm using a small flat blade screwdriver. I'm going to get started on this corner, trying to be as careful as possible, knowing that the screwdriver is obviously harder than the plastics used in this material. Once I get that popped out just a little bit, I'm going to take over with my plastic pry tool to work my way around and start popping this panel free. Once that drops down, you're going to want to unplug all of these connectors so that you can set it off to the side. Now we'll just continue to work our way up the center stack and remove this heater control panel. This is just held in with clips at this point, so you can get your hands underneath and pull straight back. Then just be sure to get this electrical connector unplugged before you set that off to the side. Then you're just going to need a 10mm socket to remove the two bolts you can see here, as well as one on either side that are kind of far back in these openings. So once you get these two outside ones loose, they're likely just going to kind of drop down and rest inside of there. Go ahead and grab a magnet to retrieve both of those before you go any further. Once you have those screws out, this, just like the other panels, is going to pull straight back. And then again, you're going to have several connectors back here that need to be unplugged. Just kind of pay attention as you're starting to unplug all these, as there is this little jumper type harness back here that doesn't need to be unplugged. Next, you'll come up here to the top of the dash, remove the factory rubber tray, and then you can grab the lower mounting bracket for your panel. That'll place right down into this factory dash tray, just like that, with the larger tab toward the rear. And then what you're going to be looking to do here is simply center this in the factory molded kind of cutout here before holding it in place and marking all 4 of these mounting holes. So at this point, you can drill through using the bracket as a guide, or since you've marked these, take them off, and then we're going to recommend that you drill just one so that you can place the bracket back up and drop a bolt through it to kind of double check all your marks out here before drilling all those holes. So then also, while you have just that one first hole drilled and a bolt dropped through it, it's going to be a good idea to grab the upper dash mount panel and simply place it over top of the bracket, checking the hole alignment to all of those mounting holes and making sure that it's centered in this factory dash cutout before continuing on and drilling those last 3 holes. So you're just looking to drill about a 1/4 inch hole for each of these as you're using a 1/4 bolt to get it installed. And then you can see we have here a right angle drill with a step drill bit. That just kind of gives you plenty of room so you don't have to worry about interference with the windshield up here. And then we're just going to kind of slowly drill down through. So then the hardware you're going to be using here is a 1/4 button head bolt with a 1/4 nylon locking nut from the bottom side. So you'll need a 5/32 hex up here and a 7/16 wrench for these. After you've done all that test fitment and come back and drilled your last 3 holes, you can finish installing the rest of that 1/4 inch hardware. Then at this point, the lower mounting bracket can be tightened in place. With that lower bracket tight, you can place the upper plate on top and loosely start all 3 of the mounting bolts. Then at this point, you're going to be using this rectangular cutout as a guide to center up and drill a hole for the USB cables to pass through in this upper dash panel. So you're going to probably want a step bit for this process, as you're going to need to drill these out to a 3/4 inch hole to accept those cables. For this part, I'm just going to start it centered through here, remove the panel, and then continue on with that 3/4 inch hole. Now you do have to be careful a little bit with this one, as this main factory wire harness is a little bit closer to the dash right here. So you kind of want to have it pulled down as you start to drill this. So like I said, I removed that panel, and then using the hole I just started as a pilot, I'll finish out that 3/4 inch hole. Now you're ready to install the USB cable into the accessory panel. Simply start the loose ends and pull them down through, and then snap this into place. Then you can feed these cable ends one at a time down through the hole you just drilled and pull all the slack through before putting this panel in place for the final time. Now one thing you may find as you go to place this down in, depending on how accurately you drilled this hole and kind of the location of it, how centered you were, is you may have just a little bit of interference between the bottom of the cable extension here and the dash panel. If you're running into that, just go ahead and pull this back out briefly and open up that hole a little bit to accommodate this passing through. After you've clearanced that out, you can go ahead and reinstall the 1/4 inch button head hardware up top and tighten them up. Next, you're going to need to figure out how you're going to power the USB outlets up here in the panel. So for this, a good place to start is right here along the passenger side. We found there's a pretty clear path to route the cables in and down, and then you can come out the bottom where this factory power outlet panel typically snaps into place. So once you do get the wires routed down here, you do have a couple different options for how you're actually going to power them. If you're someone who's pretty concerned about or not comfortable with splicing into a factory wire harness, you can always make a small cutout or drill a small hole in the bottom of this factory power panel. You can route these out through the bottom and then plug in either to the USB plug here, or get yourself a 12-volt lighter socket to USB converter so that you can plug it in here and then have a place to plug in those cables. For something that results in a little bit cleaner look and then still allows you to retain full function of those factory USB ports, lighter outlets, and still have power up here, you can pick up a 12-volt to USB converter like I have here. So what we'll be doing with this, using the black and red power supply wires from this converter, we'll be clipping the harness here running to the factory 12-volt lighter socket, and using butt connectors we'll splice these into one end and then reconnect it so that you can fully retain the power to all of those sockets, as well as then plug our USB cable extension into each of these and tuck this all in behind the dash here, up behind that power access panel. So once you do get everything wired up, you'll want to double check all of that, make sure your power is working properly up here, and then you can begin reassembly. So one thing you're going to want to look for as you begin the reassembly process is you'll need to check for any of these little plastic clips that may either be stuck in their location here or may have fallen out along the way. You'll want to find all of those and clip them back to either the radio or the panel that you're snapping back in, because if they're just left in here and you push this back in, they're just going to fall out down into the dash. So go ahead and grab that radio and start by reconnecting all these wire harness connections. So with that wiring reconnected, you can snap the radio back in and reinstall these bottom 4 screws. Following that, you'll reinstall the heater control panel, again making sure to get it plugged back in. Then you can plug back in and reinstall this auxiliary power panel. Following that, you'll reinstall this cup holder and tray section. As with all of these, just make sure that you have them lined up properly before you apply any pressure so you don't break any of these clips. Then the shifter trim and shift handle can also be reinstalled. So with all that back in, your install is complete. Now if you guys have any questions about this installation or any other product we offer here at Victory 4x4, feel free to reach out to us. You can send us an email at info@victory4x4.com or give us a phone call at 269-459-8447.